Welcome back to Book Bite Insights, where big ideas meet bite-sized brilliance. The Road to Serfdom by Friedrich Hayek is a powerful warning about the dangers of central planning and government overreach. Written during World War II, Hayek argues that when governments try to control economies too much, they inevitably restrict freedom and push societies toward totalitarianism. A classic in political and economic thought, this book remains deeply relevant today. Let's break it down into 8 key insights. Key point 1. Freedom versus central planning. Hayek's main argument is that freedom and government control are like oil and water. They don't mix. He warns that when governments try to control economies with excessive planning, they take away people's ability to make choices. While socialism and central planning might seem fair on the surface, they actually lead to more restrictions on individuals. The more the government plans, the less freedom people have. Many people assume that greater government control leads to greater fairness, but Hayek argues the opposite. When individuals lose their ability to make decisions about their own work, money, and businesses, society stagnates. Innovation and creativity die because people are no longer rewarded for their efforts. Hayek believed that history repeatedly showed this pattern. Whenever governments took over economic control, personal freedoms shrank. Fun fact, Hayek didn't write this book as a right-wing attack on socialism. He was warning about all forms of excessive control, whether from the left or right. He saw the dangers of both Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia, showing that extremes on both sides lead to oppression. Key point 2. The slippery slope to tyranny. Hayek argues that once a government starts controlling the economy, it's nearly impossible to stop. Small interventions turn into bigger ones, and eventually leaders demand full control. His warning? Even well-meaning policies can end up leading to dictatorship. Look at history. The Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, and fascist Italy all started with economic controls that expanded into full political oppression. Even democracies can slide down this dangerous path if people aren't careful. Governments often use crises, such as wars, economic downturns, or pandemics, as an excuse to expand their control. Hayek warns that once people give up their freedoms for temporary security, they rarely get them back. A major reason why tyranny happens is because people assume just a little control won't hurt. But Hayek emphasizes that a government that controls one part of life will soon find reasons to control more. The slide toward totalitarianism doesn't happen overnight. It happens step by step, often in ways people don't notice until it's too late. Key point 3. Why socialism fails. Socialism sounds great in theory. Let's make everything fair. But Hayek argues that fairness through government planning leads to inefficiency and oppression. When governments try to distribute wealth and control production, they end up with shortages, poor quality goods, and black markets. One of the biggest problems is that central planners can never fully understand the needs of every individual in society. They make decisions based on what they think people need, but the reality is far more complex. Hayek believed that only individuals acting in a free market can determine what is truly valuable and necessary. Government-imposed fairness often leads to equal misery rather than equal prosperity. Central planners simply can't replace the efficiency of free markets. The invisible hand of supply and demand works better than bureaucratic control. In planned economies, corruption thrives because people try to work around rigid government policies. Key point 4. The knowledge problem. Hayek's famous concept, the knowledge problem, explains why central planning always fails. No single person or committee can know everything about an economy. Prices in a free market act like signals, adjusting supply and demand automatically. When governments try to set prices, they remove these natural signals, causing chaos. Imagine trying to run a global business without knowing what customers want, what supplies are available, or what competitors are doing. That's what happens in a planned economy. Decision makers are flying blind. This is why top-down planning often leads to shortages of essential goods. If a government miscalculates food production, people starve. If they overproduce, resources are wasted. Free markets avoid this problem by allowing businesses and individuals to adjust naturally. Key point 5. Individualism is the key to progress. At the heart of Hayek's philosophy is individualism. He believes that when people are free to make their own choices, societies flourish. Creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship thrive in environments where people control their own destinies. The greatest achievements in history, electricity, the internet, space exploration, weren't planned by governments. They came from risk-takers, thinkers, and dreamers. When governments try to direct economic growth, they usually slow it down or choose the wrong priorities. The best progress happens when millions of independent minds work toward solving problems. One of Hayek's biggest warnings is against collectivism, the idea that society should be managed as one unified body. He argues that treating people as a mass rather than individuals leads to tyranny. When governments decide what's best for the collective, they often ignore the rights and desires of individuals. Key point 6. Democracy at risk. People often assume democracy is safe, but Hayek warns that even democracies can slide into dictatorship if they give too much power to the state. A government that controls the economy will eventually need to control speech, media, and personal choices. Why? Because once people start resisting bad policies, the state must silence them to keep power. History shows that democratic governments often limit freedoms under the excuse of protecting the people. But once rights are taken away, leaders rarely give them back. The danger isn't just an obvious dictatorship, it's the slow erosion of freedom over time. Key point 7. The power of free markets. Hayek isn't just warning about government control, he's advocating for free markets as the best way to organize society. Markets aren't perfect, but they allow for competition, efficiency, and innovation. In a free market system, businesses compete to provide better products, people are rewarded for their work, and innovation thrives. Unlike in planned economies, where bureaucrats make decisions about what people should buy and sell, free markets let individuals decide for themselves. This creates a dynamic, ever-evolving economy that adapts to people's real needs. When governments control the economy, they eliminate competition. Without competition, there is no incentive to improve products, services, or efficiency. This results in stagnation, waste, and often corruption. Free markets, on the other hand, force businesses to innovate to stay ahead. Key point 8. Freedom is fragile. Let me ask you something. Would you give up your freedom for a little security? Most people say no, but history shows that once governments gain control, they rarely give it back voluntarily. Every step towards central planning makes it harder to reverse course. One of Hayek's key arguments is that even well-meaning leaders, when given too much power, will eventually be forced to restrict freedom to maintain control. Once a government plans the economy, it must also control speech, media, and individual choices, because people will inevitably disagree with those plans. As dissent grows, the state must suppress opposition, leading to authoritarianism. Throughout history, people have surrendered freedom in exchange for promises of stability and fairness. Hayek urges societies to remain vigilant, resist centralization, and uphold free markets and individual choice. Because once lost, freedom is rarely regained without a struggle. And there you have it, The Road to Serfdom by Friedrich Hayek, distilled into 8 essential insights that reveal how central planning, even with good intentions, can slowly erode personal freedom. If this book got your gears turning, I've got 2 brilliant follow-ups that will take your thinking even further, whether you're sharpening your stance or challenging your beliefs. First up, Capitalism and Freedom by Milton Friedman. If Hayek gave us the warning, Friedman gives us the blueprint. This classic breaks down how economic freedom fuels political freedom and what happens when we lose sight of that connection. Second, a bold contrast, The Conquest of Bread by Peter Kropotkin. This one comes from the opposite camp, an anarcho-communist vision where mutual aid and voluntary cooperation replace markets and the state entirely. Reading it alongside Hayek is like putting 2 magnets together from different poles. You feel the tension, and that's where real understanding begins. If you enjoyed this bite-sized journey into big ideas, hit that like, tap subscribe, and join us here at Book Bite Insights,